When this competition for the Bill Lawry Oval Pavilion redevelopment came up, we were really keen to enter. It was an exciting brief, it was well written, and we thought it deserved a really compelling response. But unfortunately, time just got in the way, so we decided to hold our own little design competition at DS, and this is my response. When I looked at the brief, there were two calls to action that really resonated with me. The first one was this idea of invasion and what's happened in Australia with the Indigenous population and what we're doing to address that. The second was the idea of climate crisis and what are we doing to address that. And I used these calls of action to develop three principles which I used to develop my design response: reset, respect, and recognition. This is the site for the redevelopment, but in many ways the location of the site and the actual site is irrelevant because the calls to action are applicable to so many projects. The principle of reset is expressed through a notional idea of reinstating the land to what it was before this development was ever started. The principle of respect is expressed in how we actually develop that site, of engaging with the community to understand what is needed, of only clearing the land that needs to be cleared to provide the functions that are needed, of recognizing the existing features there and making the most of them, so perhaps connecting to Mary Creek. And instead of building large structures that dominate this beautiful space, of looking at lifting up the land in particular places, and under that lifted land, locating the functional spaces that we need for a development such as this. And into that lifted land, we can then carve in terraces on which we sit and stand to watch the events happening on the field. And above those carved in terraces, we can construct very simple structures that provide shelter, but they don't dominate what's happening in the area. And then the principle of recognition. I see this has been expressed in a couple of ways. This project is driven in part to pay respects to Bill Lawry, a well-known Australian cricketer and commentator. Now, I don't know Bill, but from my point of view, the best way to show respect would be through engaging with him and asking him how he wants to be recognised. Perhaps asking is enough. He doesn't need a whole building built to do that. But the principle of recognition is also expressed in the approach, of the understanding that what we've done in the past can be used to inform the future, especially so that we don't just try and build off errors already made, but try and figure out how do we take where we are now and improve it so that the future is better and the results are better. Thank you.
Morning everyone, my name is David Cardamone and today I'm going to be presenting my design idea for the Bill Lawry Oval Pavilion redevelopment for the city of Darebin. Just going through the RFT information here, a bit of understanding with the site. I guess my design ideas tries to be as true as possible to the brief and mindful of where the pavilion is placed, this northwest location on site. I intend to really provide a pavilion, a modern day pavilion that mindful of the traditional pavilion that sort of is inboard and doesn't speak to sort of its broader precinct outside of the oval. It's very internalised traditionally. My design idea looks to sort of look at a precinct and entrance from Westgarth Street and the Oldest Gardens, and really start to create a cognitive place of entrance that really draws the attention of the community and a real focal architectural piece for that corner entrance and precinct entry on site. So my design idea began with an interest in sport from my personal perspective, and started to look at the players, AFL and cricket focused, but started to look at the actions of the games, the batting of the cricketer, the bowling, the handballing, and the kicking of football, I found that there was a real strong connection with regards to feet or foot being grounded with regards to all those actions, and then furthermore, there's a projection. So the action of the the hitting or the handball, the kicking, the bowling, the arm coming out, really was quite prominent to me once I started to look at all these actions and games. There's always, a grounded body or footing, and then there was a projection, whether it be the ball or the batting or the action of the individual. And then obviously as well, Bill Lawry, really trying to tie in the fact that everyone's cognitive with his voice. It's prevalent amongst the community, but I think that's just it. He also connected with the community on a primarily cricket, but I think everyone that knows of Bill Lawry, is also connected to him as a person. His love for pigeons and just the everyday Australian lifestyle. Everything that comes with it, real laid-back nature, etc. So I really wanted to try and capture that as well, and that sort of tied into the precinct development and the opportunity to really have this pavilion connecting both internally and externally as a facility. So I guess that's where this idea of a two-way sort of connection, both internally with the Oval and externally with the Aldous Gardens, and then trying to tie the landscape into the pavilion as well. So starting to bridge that gap of that hard backing border, and then there's a footprint, then there's a garden. So really trying to connect the two and integrate the facility with the landscape as well as from a program perspective, community rooms above, viewing of the Oval, gym, etc. at first floor, and then having those views as well. Really trying to create a space that's productive and conducive for exercising and productivity. You can see here site plan. The idea to sort of connect the landscape in. As per the previous image, grounding the program underneath on ground level for the change rooms, umpires, etc., canteen. Again, bit closer in, bit more specific, but you see the idea that this facility could really start to captivate and capture the corner of the site. Connections made, the ground floor plane coming up, connecting with this first floor sort of viewing platform that has two-way viewing and really starts to engage with this entrance as you come in off Westgarth Street. You sort of see here just this basic sketch. The idea that you'd have viewing as you arrive, you'd be able to see into the program, and that the ability of seeing in really starts to break down that barrier of that solid boundary, and then interaction as well. So we start to have a program that's happening underneath when the Oval's in use, and then also when it's not, and the same for the community centre as well. Really mindful that people are activated and engaged with that space, even if they're just walking past, and they know it's there and it's there for use when there's not a game or facility isn't on. And then finally, what it would look like from the Oval perspective, again, going right back to the ideas that I had with this grounded sort of footprint or body, and then, projection of the first floor and facility of the building design, reaching out over to the Oval for the viewing. So I hope I appreciate your time first and foremost. I hope you enjoy my design idea, and good luck to everybody involved with the design process moving forward. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amelia. So the first thing I did to figure out how to best approach the design challenge was to go back over the RFT document. And try and really understand what Darebin were after and why. And I boiled it down to these three motives. The first being to update the facilities, the current building having compliance issues, accessibility problems in terms of DDA, and likely not being gender inclusive makes the existing building no longer fit for purpose. The second reason was to make an architectural statement. So they use quite emotive and aspirational language to describe how they're after a design solution that demonstrates design excellence, innovation, and is striking and captivating, but uplifts the urban surrounds. And the third one, and most important one, is to benefit the community. And the document expresses how all of the above is done with the intent of benefiting the greater community of Darebin and giving back to the locals. So creating a special place for the sports teams and the Darebin locals to congregate and be proud of. Council's document indicates that the grandstand will be demolished as well eventually, but will not be rebuilt as part of this project. Despite this in forming a potential design response, I've looked at what redesigning the Oval sporting amenities would mean in its entirety. So including considering how the grandstand design with the other sporting amenities should be approached. In the end, it's all supposed to work together, and each of the buildings and how they support the sport and the venue. So I felt it only made sense to look at a design approach that included the grandstand as well. So after approaching those key motives, I chose a few key design focuses that I thought would best deliver on those objectives. So the first one was spectatorship. At the heart of what this building is a place to watch and commentate on the game. In that sense, it's even more apt that it's named after Bill Lawry, as he's become a staple of Australian sport, spectating or commentating on the game, being the voice you hear in summer in the background of your house when you've got the cricket on in the background. I feel an obvious way to lift this aspect of the space is to open the pavilion up to being a place where you can not only watch the game but also turn your head to view your surrounds. This way the pavilion becomes visually connected to the rest of the surrounding urban spaces like Aldous Gardens and the nearby playground if you're keeping an eye on the kids and the game. And a clear downside to the existing pavilion is it has no street presence, so there's certainly room in this sense to advertise it more and open it up to having more of a visual dialogue with Westgard Street. The second design focus is approachability. The current pavilion is a closed off monolithic structure. It doesn't invite people in and it divides the spaces in front and behind it. And as a building that's meant to be for the community, it should advertise itself to its surrounds and draw people to it and its activity. So the materiality and the form should be less impenetrable and fortress-like, but be more permeable and transparent, simply so that it's a more uplifting space to be in, and also to encourage a sense of placemaking to take place and people to want to hire it out for functions. So the next is adaptive reuse. The language of the subject matter of the CEOI makes it clear that Darebin cares and is concerned about the climate emergency and is rightly so looking to play a role in transforming their community to eventually not negatively impact on the environment. Clearly, the building process comes to bear heavily on this issue, particularly with regards to material waste, so it's only natural and fitting that we should look to explore clever and innovative ways to adapt the existing materials where possible. So from what I've been able to see from photos, this is mainly concrete blockwork and metal roof sheeting, but this is definitely a way we could add excitement and that add a layer of creativity to the built form. It'll also add that layer of familiarity, history and narrative to the building, which carries a lot of history and memories that will be linked to its materiality and how people remember it looking in the past. Which brings me to my fourth focus, nostalgia. The suburbs that make up Darebin, their buildings and communities have an established history, by Melbourne standards at least, in a post-colonial sense, and also, as Council points out, in a pre-invasion sense as well. So the writing in the RFT document devoted to detailing the Indigenous history of Darebin highlights the fact that the use and design of this land has never been considered from a First Peoples perspective or using their knowledge of country and context. We have a unique opportunity here to not only gain advice on how to make a new addition or a particular update to a part of something already built, but track further back and get a more fundamental and holistic perspective to inform a more meaningful design approach. We could team up with local Indigenous groups and archival societies within Darebin to help us establish a more extensive cultural story of the site and use this to create something more special, comprehensive, integrated, and more truly fit for purpose in Northcote. This would also help foster a sense of community pride within the space. And so, on to my last design focus, home base, which Weather kind of covered in some respects by some of the previous design focuses, is meant to bring home or unite all of these design focuses around this last objective, and it's to do with placemaking. The new facility, pavilion, what have you, needs to engender a sense of community ownership to be truly successful, not just to the home teams that train and reside there, but for the other users who will hopefully choose to congregate there for community events, meet friends there, use its facilities, etc., etc. So, all that being said, this final image is just a very quick attempt at putting all those design focuses together. Like I said, I've made an effort to include an image or a vision of the grandstand in this as well, even though it's not part of this project scope. It doesn't necessarily tick all the boxes, this image, but I think it brings to life some of the ideas that I was talking about in the design focuses earlier. And yeah, that's how I approach this design task.